Morning, everybody. Just got done feeding the donkeys, and I was looking at the news and saw that just about every state on the eastern coast is having a lot of power outages right now. Definitely keep them in your thoughts and in your prayers. And if you're over there on the eastern side of the country, definitely make sure that you've got some firewood, and that you know how to light the firewood. You know, a lot of people that uh, have a fireplace don't use them anymore. You know, it's even starting a fire is something that's uh, not even understood by today's young generation. So, you know, if you're not aware on how to start a fire, you might want to get used to it now. You might want to figure it out, because there's no guarantee that the power will come back on if it turns off, and you might have to rely on your ability to make a fire. You might actually have to rely on that for a short amount of time, or even a long amount of time. You know, what's going to happen if the power gets cut off and you can't use that microwave? What's going to happen if you can't use that stove, that electric stove or oven? You got a cast iron oven, a cast iron pot that you can put in the fireplace, a camping stove. If you got anything, maybe a stove that runs off of gasoline. Maybe just get one of them small charcoal grills and get a bunch of charcoal. Whatever you decide to use, make sure you have adequate amounts of fuel for that. So if you don't have a fireplace, maybe you live in an apartment, you know, you might want to consider getting a grill. You know, if you're not allowed to use a grill on your porch, you know, maybe you can get one of those propane camp stoves and use propane. Keep the propane underneath your sink or something. Have a few cans on standby, and you can have a camp stove or a camp grill in your apartment. You know, they also make a lot of different attachments for the propane tanks so that you can use it as a heater. You can get one of those shop heaters for the propane, and you know, God forbid you have to use it, but if you need to use it, you've got it. You know, the some of the real cheap alternatives to that kind of stuff and staying warm are those Zippo pocket warmers. You got a small Zippo. I might have mine here. Let me see. I don't think you get one of those Zippo pocket warmers at Walmart for I think it's like $15, real cheap. And instead of getting the Zippo lighter fluid for it, now obviously this isn't the recommendation by the manufacturer. I'm just telling you what I do. You know, you could either use the Zippo fluid for it, right? It's a small bottle. It's like $2.50, and a quarter of an ounce will keep the thing warm for like 12 hours. Or you can go and you can get a gallon of white gas or camp fuel, and if for a much better deal, and you know, just use a quarter of an ounce at a time. And you know, that 1 gallon of white gas will last your pocket warmer forever. You'll never run out. You'll be able to fill up your pocket warmer, your neighbor's pocket warmer, your dog's pocket warmer. I mean, anybody you could think of with a gallon of white gas forever, man. You'll never run out of that stuff. Definitely not in one winter. You know, if you're keeping the whole neighborhood's pocket warmers lit, you know, it'll last you one winter. That's what I'm saying. So that is the cheap way to do it. And 1 gallon of that white gas is like $10. So there's something for you to think about. If you want to go one of the old school routes, you can make your own foot warmer. Go ahead and you got to get some soapstone. You can get soapstone off of Etsy, and you basically just need a tin can. You put the tin can on its side, push the sides in to make a triangle so that it's flat on one side, so that it stays still, and you punch holes in it. The open side is where you put your tinder in, and then you lay a soapstone on the other side where your feet is going to lay. You could do it with a coffee can. You get one of them big metal coffee cans, and you punch some hole. You create a triangle, right? The side, obviously, the side that has the soapstone is where you're going to put your feet, and then the side opposite to that is going to have holes punched into it, and then the bottom is also going to be flat so that the can be placed on some like bricks or something, so it doesn't get the ground hot, but you don't want it to roll around or whatever. You can drill it into something, place it onto a brick, and anyways, just go look at some of the old antique photos of foot warmers. They used to have those foot warmers in buggies and coaches, fancy coaches back in the day during the winter. When you had a rich person riding in the coach, they had a foot warmer for them. They would light a fire underneath basically just light a fire underneath of a soapstone, and they put their feet on it. Go look it up. That's your homework for today. Anyways, they've been cutting off the power and the energy to all the Western countries, Europe, United States. All of these Western countries that are part of the green agenda are essentially self-mutilating. That's what's going on here. We're allowing our elected officials to essentially murder everybody. It's suicide. That's what it is. Suicide by decree, by the pen. They're cutting off the energy supply. Thankfully, here in Texas, we've got some leaders that are not putting up with the BS, and they're allowing the oil companies to continue operating. And, that's one of the reasons why we still have cheap oil here. And, they want us to ship the oil over to Europe at a reduced price, but the Texas, oil companies are not playing game. They're like, no, we're not doing that. And now you're seeing all these lawsuits against BlackRock for taking part in their ESG investments, which is counter to their fiduciary responsibility to essentially make profits for their investors. It's the opposite of profit. It costs money to implement the ESG agenda, the green agenda. And so you're seeing states right now that are fighting against BlackRock. They're taking their institutional investments, state level institutional investments out of BlackRock. So yeah, there is a real pushback. There is a pushback on the leadership level, and I'm glad that it's still happening. But we need to keep our head on a swivel. We need to stay alert and make sure that we don't play into the other side's narrative. We don't play into their trap. And one of the traps that they're trying to set for us right now is this crisis at the border. Yeah, there's tens of thousands of migrants coming through, and we have not fixed the border wall as we ought to have. And that is a shame. That is a shame. A nation with our ability ought to have taken care of that a long time ago. But it became political, and now, people all along the border are suffering because of it. And Eagle Pass, yes, it's definitely a crisis. Here in El Paso, yeah, it's a lot of people are getting through. Our infrastructure is a little bit more able to handle this kind of problem. There's couple thousand people came through, but we've got the ability to absorb that kind of influx. Eagle Pass doesn't. But does that mean that we need to get the United Nations involved? No, not at all. We definitely have the ability to take care of things on our own. People ask us for help. And for us to ask the United Nations for help for something that we can deal with on our own is very suspicious, wouldn't you say? Especially at a time when these technocrats are pushing for a central bank digital currency, a bio ID, a quote unquote real ID with biosignature verification. Essentially they want to enslave you. They want you to become an economic slave. So and we know who's sending these migrants up here. It's one of their own. It's George Soros, the very man that funded the campaigns of these Democrats that are in power right now. These district attorneys in these woke cities that are not prosecuting people according to the law. They are not acting in good faith towards the law that they swore to uphold. Right? They're bad faith. They're bad faith officials. They're acting in bad faith against the oaths that they swore. Right? And for that reason, they are treasonous. They are enemies. I mean, and I'm saying that with utmost sincerity. They are enemies of the Constitution. When they do not uphold the law that they swore, and they take orders from somebody else overseas that funded them, that's called bribery. That's called treason. These people are traitors, okay? And I don't, I'm not telling you go out there, commit violence towards them or fight them or whatever. No, vote them out, right? Vote them out, shine a light on them, and fight with your words. Fight with your words. You speak the truth, right? You shine a light on something. Light is antibacterial. It's antiviral. The truth is a light. All right. So when you see these things, you speak against it. You point it out. You shine a light on what is actually going on. You see these officials acting in malice, say it in the public square openly. Say this is malice and it violates this law or whatever. Look in the books. Look see what law they're violating, right? And speak it. Once you speak it, other people will see it. And once they see it, the ones that are committing the crimes tend to get afraid. So you ought to put them in fear. Not fear for their life, but fear for their career, fear for their freedom, right? Because if they realize what they're doing is illegal and that they could be put in jail for a long time for it, then yeah, they're going to be afraid. So speak up, speak out, and share these things with people. Anyways, you know what they're trying to do. They're getting ready to start reducing methane emissions, which means that the price of beef is going to go way up because they're going to have satellites over all the ranches now in the United States monitoring the methane. That's going to create a zinc deficiency in the United States because most of the zinc that we get comes from beef. Not very many Americans eat seafood or clams to get, or oysters to get zinc. We eat beef. We eat burgers, right? And Once the price of that goes up, a lot more people are gonna just be eating chicken instead and other cheap meats. So, it could definitely people could definitely be getting uh, sick a lot more often because of that. So, make sure you stock up on your zinc. Make sure you've got your multivitamins and stuff like that. And if if the markets crash like what I'm thinking they will, because if you watch my video the other day that I did on the IHR, you would see that um, if they pass the amendments that they want to pass, essentially all healthcare products and all healthcare technologies will be under the full control and essentially ownership of the World Health Organization. That would be according to the new IHR. If everybody agrees to that, the World Health Organization will have essentially ownership over all technologies and products. I mean, they will be acting as though they are the owner. A company might be the physical owner of the product, until World Health Organization decides to declare a fake somewhere, and then the World Health Organization could just take whatever they want from any healthcare company, including their intellectual property. And so once that is realized in the markets, once the investors realize that they are no longer investing in something that is proprietary to the company, they're going to pull their money out. That's the way it works, because you're not going to invest in a company that has, or keep your money invested in a company that has a proprietary product that you want to exploit for profits, right? And then when you find out that that item is no longer proprietary, that means you lost your profit. There's a very big risk that you're going to lose your profit margins at that point, especially when the World Health Organization can tell that company that they are required by law to provide that product at a lower price, which is what the IHR says. They can make a company sell them their product for a lower price. So it's in my opinion, it's going to crash the markets. It's going to be a domino effect. You're going to see everybody pull out of the pharmaceutical companies, and that's going to be a domino to crash the markets. And once that happens, what's going to happen with the commodities? What's going to happen with the food, the prices of food? It's going to go sky high. It's going to go sky high. So what are you doing? What are you preparing now for next year? What are you preparing to plant in the ground for next year? Are you planting an annual? Are you planting a perennial? Right? If you're thinking about growing trees take years before they start fruiting. So if you want to grow some trees, make sure you get them germinated, sprouted now. Get them started now. And if you are going to grow some kind of grain, you might want to think of some kind of plants that are perennial. So it's a lot less work for you to maintain those kinds of plants. You got to plant corn every year. If you can plant corn, fantastic. You got to plant sorghum every year. If you've got the soil to plant sorghum every year, awesome. You ought to do it. But don't forget about some of those foods that got our ancestors through the Depression. Things like buckwheat, things like curly dock, yellow dock. Dock is an example of one of those perennials that provides a lot of sustenance. But you got to be careful of the oxalates in the leaves. I don't know if the oxalates are in the seeds and the stem. But you might want to check Green Greg's channel for that regarding more information on dock. But I know once you plant dock, it brings nutrients back up into the top of the soil. They got big tap roots, which are also edible, and they get bigger every year. And it brings nutrients from the deep parts of the soil up to the top, and it's kind of like a soil remediator. So you don't have to plant a whole bunch of them. You can plant a few of them in your field, and it'll help the topsoil be very rich. And not only that, but you can eat the whole top of the plant every year. Let's say you eat the seeds, right? And then you give the rest of it to your chickens or your rabbits or your sheep, goats, donkeys, whatever, right? So it's a multi-use food. It's also got medicinal purposes. And in an emergency, if you get really hungry, you can dig up that huge root. And I mean, the roots are big, man, of a curly dock. But it comes back every year. Once you plant it once, you don't have to plant it again. It just keeps coming. The top part of the plant will die, but the root goes into kind of hibernation, and then in the spring it just pops back up again. So that's something to think about. Because the kind of scenario that we're going into, you're going to want to reduce the amount of necessary work wherever you can, right? So curly dock, yellow dock, or what's the other one? It's like broadleaf, or there's another one which is a big version, broadleaf dock or something. Those are perennials, right? So once you get them established, it'll reduce your workload. So they'll be there if you need them. You can harvest it during hard times. And another one for you to really think about is amaranth. Amaranth and sunflowers. Amaranth and sunflowers will grow in soils where most stuff will not grow, right? So, like, for example, here in El Paso, I got a friend where I'm keeping my donkeys on his ranch, and he's been trying to figure out what he can grow on his property for like 25 years. But I drive through his property and there's amaranth growing everywhere. There's saltbush growing everywhere. There's mesquite trees growing everywhere. Every one of those trees grows in very bad soil, and every one of those plants is extremely valuable. They're all edible. Saltbush is edible. Mesquite's edible. Palo Verde is edible. Amaranth is edible. The problem is that's not the kind of stuff that you see on the dinner plates or in the grocery store of Americans, right? So you got to be willing to consider those kinds of things in the future as a potential crop, as a potential food crop, right? Because if you got good enough soil over here for sorghum, right, but then over there the sorghum won't grow. Well, what about amaranth? What about curly dock? What about buckwheat? You got to think about those things, because the kind of situation we're going into is going to be bad. So anyways, I've been talking for 25 minutes almost. I'm going to end the video. Sorry about the long-winded episode, guys, but thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. As always, don't forget, help out your neighbors. Bye.